Hey everybody, this is JDGaming back today with an in-depth introduction to a JDGaming mainstay. This is Banish Psychics, a strategy that you guys may have seen on my channel for a very long time that I never really did in this format simply because I never really did anything in this format. But as a true staple for JDGaming content, I figured this is something that is truly important for this. I've been building variations of Psychics for a very long time. When Jeff Jones topped YCS Toronto, when 𝗖𝗢𝗍𝗓𝗔 came to 2, I was ecstatic because I was like, hey, this is the deck I've been playing and it's finally like getting some time in the spotlight. Of course, from then it hasn't really seen any competitive play at all, but I still always loved this strategy and always went with different builds of it. There were defensive strategies, hand trap based strategies, ones that were more combo oriented as of late in Link format using Overdrive Teleporter and Hush Psychic Cleric. Heck, there was even a 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗡𝗘𝗖𝗧 Overdrive Teleporter 𝗪𝗔𝗍𝒄𝗏 build that I got featured on 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝑑𝒆 channel. So, I mean, that's honestly when I feel this channel started getting more and more attention, is through that shout out. So thanks once again to 𝕿𝖆𝒇𝒑 if you happen to be watching. But I wanted to go ahead and showcase what the psychic components actually do so that going forward you guys will have this as this guide for psychics in an all-in-one package, and then you can go ahead and see how versatile this strategy truly is. So not much else to talk about in this strategy. I think the weight of this archetype speaks for itself on this channel. So without further ado, let's give a quick in-depth introduction to Banish Psychics. Much like in any deck profile, I'm going to go through the deck's main core here, and in Psychics you simply can't do that without discussing the powerhouse that is Emergency Teleport. I don't know how many copies it's at the time you're watching the video, but currently it is limited and for good reason. It's a quick play spell that reads, special summon any level 3 or lower Psychic from your hand or deck, so it doesn't matter if you've already dead drawn or whatever, still viable with this card, and the only stipulation is the monster gets banished during the end phase. That'll rarely happen because that only works if it's still on the field. You'll probably be using it as some kind of material, and even cards like Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit that you can tech into other strategies using Emergency Teleport can activate their effects from the field, so you really have no excuse for having to banish your monster, unless your opponent decides not to play into the Ogre. So overall, Teleport pretty much dictates how this deck is able to play. If you had 3 copies of this, honestly, the deck would be a lot more competitive, even in modern eras, because as a huge combo enabler here, you'd be able to go off with your Hush Psychic Cleric, Overdrive Teleporter, and some of the other cards that I'm about to talk about here. But as it stands right now, Emergency Teleport is still at 1 in the TCG, 2 in the OCG, so hopefully maybe one day it will slowly peel off the list here. But as of now, we are severely hampered by not having 3 of this. What we have instead is a card that used to be really, really good, and nowadays it's very, very lackluster, but still somewhat okay if you're not trying to win and you're just trying to exploit the fun elements of Psychic. So this is what I nickname non-urgent teleport. So Serene Psychic Witch is a level 3 Earth Psychic monster, 1400 attack, 1200 defense, and she reads, when she's destroyed from the field for any reason, by battle, card effect, whatever, you can banish one Psychic monster from your deck with 2000 or less attack, and as long as this card remains in the graveyard, you could special summon during the next standby phase. So a few things you have to keep in mind. First of all, it says the next standby phase, so if it dies during my turn, like I crash it into something, I summon that monster during my opponent's turn. Very good for bringing out something like Ghost Ogre, who can interrupt during the opponent's turn from the field. You gotta remember, Ghost Ogre is not just a hand trap, it's actually a field trap as well, and the only Psychic out of those Ghost Girl tuner monster hand traps. On top of that, you gotta remember, Serene Psychic Witch needs to stay in the graveyard. A little harder to do these days with Called by the Grave running everywhere and a lot of other hand traps, so honestly this card hasn't aged well, and as a sign of that, it has this permanent scar in its text that is the when you can. So of course this card can miss timing. Essentially what that means is if you were to get this destroyed by a card that's chained, so it's not Chain Link 1. So let's say you activated any card. Let's say you played Emergency Teleport while this card's on your field. Your opponent chains any card that can destroy this as Chain Link 2. Witch dies as, Chain Link 2, then your Chain Link 1 resolves, so you get your monster off teleport. But since Witch wasn't just killed right now, that when you can means you missed the timing to activate Witch's effect, and that's extremely unfortunate. It was also an issue when you were playing against cards like Soul Taker back in the day. If you happen to have this in attack position or face up in defense position, let's say it was special by another copy of itself or something, where the life point gain effect was a separate clause from the actual destroying effect, and since it happened non-simultaneously, which would fail to activate for the other ability, and that's just, an unfortunate thing. That's why I had cut this from a lot of my combo-oriented variants lately, but realistically, it is one of the key strong suits of the deck. The advantage here is, although not reliable in a competitive environment, it is still very, very powerful, like a local event where opponents aren't able to read how this card works. They're not familiar with it, especially nowadays because it's been out of play for so long, and you're able to set up any one of your plays, as you'll see, based on its banishing and then returning effect. So quite vulnerable, but still an interesting card if you choose to play it. Basically, you build around it at 3, or you play none of it and forsake it to go for your combo pieces. So that's what I have to say on Serene Psychic Witch. And then from here, we go on to much more viable cards for the current, speed of the game. And these guys are basically brothers that I put on the same playing field. They're pretty much flavors of the same effect. So we have Hush Psychic Cleric, who's a level 3 Earth monster with 0 attack and 2100 defense. And on the right, we have Silent Psychic Wizard, who's a level 4 with 1900 attack, but no defense. Both of them have the same general ability and concept. They let you banish a psychic from your graveyard, and when they're sent to the graveyard, it's not a can effect, so you can't miss timing on these, which is, very good and playable in modern events, or modern formats at least, is that you can go ahead and special summon one of, if not the only, removed monster that was banished by this effect. So it lets you basically reverse toolbox from your graveyard any psychic monster, and I emphasize that any part. It can be a synchro monster. In the future, if we get more links besides 𝗪𝗇𝖑𝗊𝗲's Electromite, you can bring back those. You can bring back, of course, your floaters, your tuners, and all those for combo pieces, but entire psychic boss monsters can come back, and because we have some tuner monsters in the psychic theme from the 5Ds era when these cards originated, it of course makes sense that you would want to go for some kind of a synchro, maybe a little bit of link, but mainly synchro strategy using psychic monsters. The difference is the trigger. So Silent Psychic Wizard banishes one monster upon being normal summoned. That's kind of a tricky thing, because let's say you normal summon this, and I'm trying to banish, Serene Psychic Witch from the graveyard, so that's Chainlink 1. If my opponent plays Torrential Tribute or some Interrupter to get rid of Silent Psychic Wizard, even if this card goes to the graveyard, what happens is Torrential Tribute kills this card. Then Chainlink 1, the Witch gets banished. Since the banishing happened before this wizard actually, or rather, the banishing happened after the wizard was removed, there was never a tether created, and so I missed timing per se, although that's not the gameplay terminology, to activate Witch's effect, or Wizard's effect rather, because the monster was never banished and it didn't die after it banished the monster. So just watch out for that. It's a very, very rare thing nowadays where people aren't playing a ton of traps, or if they are, they're playing things like Solemn Strike, so it doesn't matter anyway. But still keep it in mind, if you want to play Psychics at any decent level, you want to make sure you keep that factor in mind. But still a very solid card. Level 4, 1900, is never bad, especially when you can bring back an entire synchro monster for your arsenal. Then we have the superior version, I think, in Hush Psychic Cleric. So this card, when it's normal or flip summon, is automatically changed to defense position to make use of that big booty there. And of course, since it has no attack points, you want it in defense position anyway. Its trigger for its banishing is by discarding a card from your hand, and although that inherently seems like a huge minus that only could be rectified by the Mind Master coming back, please Konami, one day, that card's too degenerate as is, but I digress. Essentially, you have to discard a card, but you can banish any psychic from your graveyard, and then when he's sent from the field to the graveyard, you go and choose any of the banished psychics from this effect, and you can summon it. So essentially, you could go and create a pool. Realistically, you're never going to do that, because why would you just pitch multiple cards when you only get one of them back upon removal? So why is this card any good? Well, back in the day, you could play this with Hyper Librarian and Mind Master. Cards like Mind Master that could tribute, or even Enemy Controller, the symbol of JD right here, that could get rid of Cleric from the field, or even Wizard, could trigger their abilities and then get you a free monster. And Cleric was especially notorious in that if you had one of them and any psychic in your graveyard, you could go ahead and discard a Cleric using its effect, and then when selecting your monster to banish, you can then select the Cleric you just discarded, because the way Yu-Gi-Oh works is as long as you're able to activate the effect in the first place, you can go ahead and initiate it. So requirement 1, have a psychic in your grave. I activate Cleric's effect. discard my other cleric, and now I can choose that cleric at resolution to banish, and then, you know, I have a cleric that turns into a cleric, and I can do that again infinitely as long as I have cards in hand, and that was facilitated by Hyper Librarian, the synchro monster, of course, that lets you draw every time you synchro summon. It was even easier with Mind Master, who could just tribute your cleric infinitely to keep bringing out tuner monsters to allow you to synchro spam with Librarian, but of course that card is now forbidden. So how do we play cleric? Why are we using this thing when there isn't like a really good way of doing it? Well, first of all, it's still pretty good at looping a couple times just to bring out a big boss monster like your Boral Sword Dragon, which this deck very much appreciates in its ability to end games out of nowhere using weak free monsters like the Psychics. But on top of that, the biggest things are this card's effect triggers at any time if you can pitch a card, not upon normal summon. And that special summon freedom is extremely important, especially because it is a level 3 monster. Because now we talk about another modern card. So Overdrive Teleporter, a bit risky with hand traps, but it's still a lot more viable than Serene Psychic Witch these days. It's a level 6 monster that says it cannot be special summoned, and for some reason he's a light monster. But realistically, I mean, you're only using the low-level Psychics for Naturia Synchro, so you don't need this guy to be an Earth monster. It's okay if he's light. 2100 defense, reverse 1200 defense points, and again, can't be special summoned, so you can't pendulum it out metal foes, darn. But what you can do is pay 2000 life points to special summon 2 level 3 psychic monsters from your deck. This effect can only be used once while these cards face up on the field, and if you could revive this guy off of your clerics or your wizards, oh my gosh, this card would have been absolutely insane. So good thing way back when Black Rose came out in Crossroads of Chaos, they decided, hey, maybe we should make it so that this card can't be special summoned. Good on you, Konami. But essentially, the fact that this summons level 3s means, of course, you can bring out your witches, but you can also bring out multiple clerics. And although back in the day you needed a cleric and a tuner monster to make use of these monsters, because let's be honest, Xyz summoning wasn't the best even with this strategy, because your monsters never went to the graveyard from the field. They went into some mystery zone where their Xyz materials, and then they went to the grave so their tethers broke. As Link Summoning came out, however, you can now bring out 2 copies of Cleric, loop them onto something, and then just go ahead and link them into things, and then they'll immediately come out. So no longer needing a tuner monster makes Teleporter even better. But then we, of course, have Ash Blossom and stuff that makes it a little less viable. Thankfully, though, we do have Called by the Grave, so definitely consider using that card to help this strategy out if you're planning on using this. But main reason that this card is so good is because of how fast it is. There are some brilliant fusion variants of this strategy that I've created, so if you're interested in seeing those, basically you utilize brilliant fusion to yard a light psychic tuner monster, and then you go ahead and tribute summon this guy, and then can go ahead and bring out your cleric, and then that leads to a synchro play, usually like a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon or something along those lines. So very powerful card, though it's a high risk, high reward card for sure, but very much necessary in the combo variants of the decks if you want more raw power. And then from here, we talk about some utility tuner monsters. So the Banish element is tied together by Esper Girl. Usually you play 1 or 2 of these, but in some variants you honestly could play 3 if you want to go wombo combo. Basically, as a level 2 Earth monster, she's very good at going Naturia Beast or Barkion, and her ability is when she's banished and then special summoned from there for any reason, you can remove the top card of your deck face down. Of course, you're allowed to look at it nowadays with Pot of Desires ruling, and then from there, when she's sent to the graveyard, add that card to your hand. So it's essentially a draw 1, although it's slightly delayed, but it being a tuner monster means you're able to go for something powerful, again, like your Naturia play, while getting a free draw, and essentially packages in your Hyper Librarian-esque effect into Esper Girl. So usually you only need 1 copy if you're using Serene Psychic Witch, or if Teleport ever comes back to more than 1. Otherwise, it may not be a bad idea playing 2 or 3 copies, just so you have ample access to this card, because this is how you don't lose cards when you play your clerics again and again. Next to her, I have a copy of Psychic Jumper. This card, again, gets more powerful when you have access to Witch, and even with more teleports as well. But basically, it's another level 2 Earth Tuner who reads once per turn. You can pay 1,000 life points to target 1 monster your opponent controls of your choice, and a Psychic you control that's not named Psychic Jumper. You switch those targets' control, and if you do, their battle positions cannot be changed for the rest of this turn. So, interesting thing about Psychic Jumper here is that it lets you trade your Serene Psychic Witch, or your Hush Psychic Cleric, or your Silent Psychic Wizard, your floater monsters over to your opponent for any monster of your choosing. And back in the day, you would synchro summon using their monster in this into something big, probably. Like you steal a level 8 monster, maybe you go for I'm forgetting the name of the card, the Leo, Keeper of Sacred Trees. There we go, the level 10 synchro monster. And if your opponent was playing like an 𝗖𝗍𝗓 strategy or whatever, kind of dead-ended, though it was always nice to steal 𝗪𝗓𝗓𝗃 or Big Eye with, you know, stuff like that in the Dragon Ruler format. But the big thing with this nowadays is you're able to go ahead and use any monster for a link summon, including link monsters that have higher ratings that count towards multiple link ratings for your summon. So Psychic Jumper is still an extremely powerful card. Currently in the build I'm featuring, I'm playing 1 Esper Girl and 2 Jumper, but you could very much play around with these ratios, and that it has to be dynamic. You have to play different amounts depending on, are you playing Witch or not? How many teleports are you allowed? And stuff like that. So Jumper is a lot less, admittedly, useful in combo variants. It's more of a tech card. Esper Girl is more of a core card, but if you have plenty of access to her, you don't need multiple copies. So it just depends on what type of deck you're playing overall, what's the rest of it shaping out to be. And then the last tuner monster I consider right now, until more stuff potentially comes out, is Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. This, of course, needs no introduction as a hand trap, but again, it is a psychic monster who can activate from the field for the exact same ability. So don't forget, you can go and summon her off of Witch by crashing Witch, and then that lets you go and disrupt your opponent with its 1800 defense during their turn, or you can bring this back during your own combo sequence using your wizards and your witches, or clerics rather. So very, very powerful card in general. Doubly so in this strategy, and as a light tuner monster that can send herself to the graveyard, this card just does everything you want in Banish Psychics. It's gonna put a psychic in the graveyard so you can start off your recovery plays. It's a hand trap that lets you fight back when you only have your 1 defender. It's a psychic monster that can keep coming back. It's a tuner monster. It's a light so you can Brilliant Fusion it. Overall, this card is just absolutely amazing, and this is a strategy I generally play 3 copies of this card in, just because of its synergy with absolutely everything. And then the last psychic monster I want to feature here is a interesting one. It's Psi-Blocker. So I'll link in the description down below a page that basically is Yu-Gi-Oh organizations or YG organizations, kind of ins and outs, ups and downs of Psi-Blocker, and basically explaining how this card works like or differently from Prohibition, because this card reads as follows. It's a wind level 4 with 1200 attack, 300 defense, and once per turn you can declare a card name. Cards with that name and their effects cannot be used until the end of your opponent's turn, and this does not exclude cards that are already on the field. So the way Psi-Blocker is different is just that you can go ahead and put out of commission cards that are already in play. If your opponent had a Nightmare monster that's locking you down or something, call that. Your opponent has a Floodgate, call that. It blanks it. On top of that, the use term is very, very broad. That's why I'm linking that text down below for you to peruse through at your convenience. But essentially, Psi-Blocker basically means you cannot use the monster as material, change its battle position, attack with it, or anything that directly initiates from that card. You could still use it to resolve effects, and you could still use them as costs, but you basically cannot touch that monster to do something. So like Thunder King Ryo actually appeared in a feature match as an example against a psychic player way back in the day. They tried to attack with Ryo into Psi-Blocker. Couldn't do that because it can't be used. Then they tried to instead change it to defense position. They couldn't do that either because its effect can't be used. So, the card can't be used rather. So overall, it's a very tricky card, but it's a very, very interesting powerhouse. I generally like teching this card at 1 in variants where I'm playing Serene Psychic Witch to the fullest, because it lets me pull this whenever I need to break my opponent's board. As a level 4, it's very easy to go ahead, call a Floodgate or something, and then go turn it with a level 3 tuner into a Black Rose Dragon to punish the opponent's entire field while everything floats. But if not, definitely consider siding it, because it is an extremely powerful psychic monster that gets extra bonus points for being a recoverable, tutorable monster within this theme. Now I want to talk a little bit about some of the most commonly played tech choices that I personally like using in this strategy, and these will vary depending on what build you're going for. Are you going for more of a defensive strategy? Are you going for more of a combo strategy? But I'll kind of explain the ins and outs as I see them. So first pair of cards I want to talk about are Extra Earth hand traps. So Construction Train Signal Red and Swift Scarecrow were 2 big ones I loved using back when Redox was a thing, because free Earth monsters in your hand was always a good thing. These are pretty much only if you're playing Serene Psychic Witch, and generally I'll play a pair of each of these. So the way they work, Swift Scarecrow, of course, people have seen back in the day of 5Ds. Basically, if your opponent does a direct attack on you, you discard it and end the battle phase. And that's really good because if you set Witch and just have Scarecrow, you're probably going to live for the turn, and that lets you, again, kick off your combos because you banish 𝗪𝗧𝗏, she gives you a free card, you can now tribute her for an Overdrive Teleporter or whatever, and, you know, you can see the shenanigans begin from right there. Psychics are a deck that do take a bit of setup with some kind of card, whether that's Witch or Teleport, and once they do, they explode, and Swift Scarecrow ensures you live to see your combos go off. Construction Train is kind of like that, but it's a very underrated card, I feel. Yes, overall, in general, it's not a good card, but in Psychics, I feel it's perfectly at home. Level 3 Earth monster, non-tuner, so it's not special in that regard, but it says, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you could special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, they have to attack this card instead, and you go straight to damage calculation. This card also cannot be destroyed by that one battle, so it's not like a Marshmallow, it's going to die after that, but the whole point is, when your opponent attacks your Witch, they attack your guy, okay, you go and banish your 𝗪𝗧𝗏 or whatever to set up for next turn. They try to go ham on you and kill your life points, but realistically, this card single-handedly blocks 2 attacks, because 1, it doesn't die, and then 2, it gets killed the second time. 1300 attack is also interesting in that some monsters in combo strategies can't actually kill it, which is kind of interesting. It happens every so often where it actually, you know, lives an extra time on top of that, but essentially it absorbs 2 hits. That's the whole point, and realistically, unless your opponent's going in with so many combo pieces and attackers that they're just going to kill you outright, the Construction Train usually is enough. And that's a really cool thing with this strategy, because in general, when you're not being killed, it's better than Swift Scarecrow, because by putting a level 3 Earth monster on the field, you're able to go and leverage that into a lot of your bigger plays. Don't forget, life points are a resource, so let your Witch get killed, take some hits, and then summon this on the last attack so that it can survive into your turn, and now all of a sudden, your Witch gives you a free monster, your Construction Train's on the field. That's a play right there, whether it's a Synchro Summon or a Link Summon, and if you normal summon something, maybe that floats into something else. You can really snowball your advantage using Construction Train Signal Red. So that's why it gets a special place in this deck. In general, again, I don't think it's a very playable card, but in Psychics, it just fits perfectly as an Earth level 3 monster, especially with Crane. So Crane is kind of your tour guide from the graveyard. It basically says level 3 Earth monster with 300 attack, 900 defense, and it basically says target a monster in your graveyard when this card is normal summoned and revive that monster. It has to be a level 3 monster for it to work, and its effects are negated, but the cool thing is all your key pieces are level 3 monsters, and you're able to go ahead and bring back Witch. She still floats if she hits the graveyard because her effect's not negated in there, only while she's on the field. When you combine this with a Construction Train or a Witch combo, you basically have, this is 2 monsters, you float it into 1 or kept 1, and that's 3 monsters. You could go for something as mighty as Trishula very easily using this card. So very, very powerful. It allows all of your combos to get even better, and it's one of the best normal summons that you can tech into this strategy. So generally, I'll see myself playing 2 copies of this just to enable some plays and get some extra mileage out of my already level 3 monsters. Another combo card is Link Slayer, a level 5 Earth monster who reads, if you have no monsters, I don't care how many my opponent has, I can special summon this card to the field for free, and once per turn, I can discard up to 2 cards and destroy that many spell or traps on the field, and that's really cool for a few reasons. If I'm going first, this card's not dead, it's a level 5 Earth monster, I can go ahead and maybe combine it with a Glow Up Bulb into an 𝗔𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏 to stop my opponent's, trap cards, or I could go ahead and discard, or rather, I use it with a tuner, go for like a Psyframe Lord Omega, or something along those lines. So play enabler there, but if I'm going second, it gets even better, because now I can pitch Psychics from my hand to grave, not only get rid of my opponent's fields, continuous or back row, but I can go ahead and yard the first Psychic necessary in order to go ahead and start floating with them with the other cards, and since it's a special summon, it doesn't eat up that valuable normal summon. I can still establish a Cleric or Wizard going forward. So that's why Link Slayer is in here. Generally, I will see myself playing 3 of these in the combo variants of the deck, or if the slow version of the deck wants more speed, Link Slayer is not a bad option in general as well. And Glow Up Bulb is in here not just because of Link Slayer, it's honestly just a generally good card. It's a free Earth monster that can come back and make your monsters like Mrs. Radiant or whatever. It's a tuner monster, and it's one of the best things to just discard for free off of your Hush Psychic Cleric, because it'll come back for free, it yards another card. Overall, it just synergizes. It's not like the most powerful thing in the world anymore, but it's just so flexible in this strategy and helps you make your plays that I love playing this card. And back when Dandelion was a thing, I would play Foolish, Dandelion, and Bulb together. Nowadays, Dandy's of course forbidden, but maybe down the line, you know, there will be a reason to play Foolish Burial with Glow Up Bulb in here as just a free access tech card. But overall, I still think it's worth playing. And then the last card I want to feature here is Torrential Tribute. Although not the powerhouse staple that everyone plays in their strategies anymore, Torrential is still a wonderful card at 3 in any build that runs your Serene Psychic Witch. So this is how you compensate for the unreliability of Witch's effect. It's you basically kill everything your opponent throws at you to try and eliminate Witch in an unconventional, non-destruction way, and you trigger your effect yourself. It also triggers your wizards, your clerics, and all that stuff along the way. Your Psi-Frame monsters from the extra deck will banish themselves and not end up getting hit by this. Overall, this card is just absolutely insane in this strategy, and it's the great equalizer that allows you to play such a slow strategy in more of a control style that allows you to then, you know, take advantage of your opponent's unfamiliarity with this deck, capitalize on your own innate combos with this strategy. It's a very fun card, and I absolutely love it in this strategy. So that's why this card's in here. And to close out this video, we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the key extra deck monsters that really should be considered first before anything else to kind of guide the rest of the strategy. And starting off, we play a single copy of Mrs. Radiant. This Link monster is, of course, needing just 2 Earth monsters to summon, powers up everything, including herself, up into a nice 1900. But it's really cool when you have Naturia Beast, who's suddenly a 27, or Naturia Barkion, who's suddenly a 3000, and all of your other Earth monsters will gain power as well. It's not so much nowadays you need Earth monsters per se, it's just that a lot of the Psychics happen to fall into that, and so Mrs. Radiant is a natural fit for just giving you 2 extra monster zones. Don't forget though, anytime you revive monsters from your graveyard, even if they're synchro monsters that are Psychic, you can just put them anywhere in your main monster zones and you don't need the arrows. So Mrs. Radiant's usually enough realistically in terms of arrow provisions, so I like it for that. And then if it happens to die, you could go ahead and recur your Psychic monsters, Mrs. Radiant itself, to summon again. Or you can go for something like a Crane, who can easily make Mrs. Radiant and then make her again because you recycled it. So very interesting card overall, but you know, not quite as necessary now with all their Link monsters, but still a powerful one of in the strategy. Then these guys, of course, I like featuring. These guys, Naturia, Beast, and Barkion, basically stop spells and traps in general. Can't stop counter traps with the Barkion, can't stop things that can't be responded to, can't stop things that get rid of Barkion. Basically annoying things. Barkion had some issues back in the day, but nowadays with Altergeists and Paleozoics, Barkion's really, really good. Their triggers feed each other, right? So Beast says if your opponent activates a spell, or if you do, for some reason, you can go ahead and mill 2 cards from the top of your deck, send them to the graveyard to negate the activation and destroy. Probably never going to run out of that effect, right? Which is insane. The other effect, Barkion, requires you to banish 2 cards from your graveyard that you start running out of, so hopefully you can somehow establish both of these together, maybe through like a glow-up bulb type of a play, you know? But essentially, Naturia Barkion allows you to go and fight through a lot of those back rows, because again, Paleozoics are normal traps. A lot of cards that Trap Trick is allowed to, you know, let you play are normal traps as well. So it's not the days where everyone's playing only Solemns and Artifact Sanctums now. So Barkion's actually getting a little bit of life breath breathed into him, so definitely like it for that. Basically, you just need Earth monsters to summon, but again, you're playing so many Earth monsters, and your tuners are mainly Earth monsters as well, so these cards are very accessible. Even if you don't play Barkion or you like side him, definitely play Beast, because this card single-handedly ends games against Pendulums and pretty much any other deck that's like modern, so do consider that. Other level 6 synchros, so these are both Psychic monsters here. I'll put them this way just because of their artwork. So 𝗖𝗍𝗓 is a generic level 6, so any tuner or non-tuner monsters, 2400 attack, 1800 defense. He also happens to be Earth, so it's kind of interesting. Apparently HTS is like high temperature superconductive if you were interested. Fun fact right there. But essentially, after damage calculation, when this card battles an opponent's monster, you can banish that monster and this card. Cool thing with that is if this thing is getting a boost by, you know, your Mrs. Radiant or something, it's a 29 DD Warrior Lady, your opponent's probably going to want to kill that with a card effect. Or if they don't want to lose a monster, they'll kill it with a card effect. But since it's a Psychic, you bring it right back from your graveyard, and no real thing lost as long as you're still in the game. That's why we got to play some other cards to make sure we don't lose all of our life points in this strategy. It has the ability to float if you're around long enough. So that's kind of the thing we got to keep in mind here. And in general, it's just really interesting in that it creates this dilemma for the opponent. Do they lose a monster and then that's it, but they lost that monster forever? Or do they go ahead and kill it with a card effect, but then it has a chance of coming back? A lot of opponents who see this card in this strategy nowadays won't even recognize that Psychics can bring this guy back for free, so they'll just kill it with a card effect anyway. So definitely love playing it because of that. Capitalize on their not being familiar with this strategy, and just go ahead and get rid of one of their key monsters afterwards. And then Psychic Nightmare is tied to Psychics. It's any tuner, but you need non-tuner Psychic monsters, which I think hurts more than if you needed a Psychic tuner, but I digress. 2400 attack, 1800 defense, which now that I realize is exactly the same stat line. Level 6 Wind monster, and this card was terrible with Mrs. Radiant back in the day when like Code of the Duels first came out and Link monsters were not very prevalent. When Mrs. Radiant was your only option, this card got weaker, but nowadays it's not the case, so you could go ahead and easily play this. Once per turn during your main phase, you could pick a random card from your opponent's hand and call what type of card it is between monster, spell, or trap. And if you guess right, I mean nowadays it's mostly going to be monster, maybe spell, you're able to go ahead and have this card gain 1000 attack for the entire turn cycle, and that's basically until your opponent's end phase. That's a 3400 beater that now lets you see one card in your opponent's hand, so you know how to play around it. You of course have cards like Psyframe Lord Omega in this strategy because it's a Psychic monster that's generic. You have things like Psi-Blocker you can be teching, and heck, you can even play Mind Crush if you want in the main or side. And overall, Nightmare allows you to synergize with all those strategies. It's a very powerful beater. 3400 gets over pretty much anything in any Yu-Gi-Oh format these days. And the fact, again, that if it dies by a card effect because your opponent can't beat it in battle, you can just bring it right back, makes this card overall extremely powerful. So I love these guys at 6. You basically play the Nightmare as your main beater, and then HTS 𝗖𝗍𝗓 is the only card you can really bring back with something like Crane, because your non-tuner Psychic monster is it's a non-tuner, non-Psychic basically. So 𝗖𝗍𝗓 has to be in here. Barakian's easy to summon off Crane as well, but main thing is you could just basically go and HTS 𝗖𝗍𝗓 instead. One comment on that I just said, you can only summon your Barakian off of your Crane if you play Psychic Commander, which is a terrible card. Or coming up in Savage Strike here, we're going to have some Earth Psychic Tuner monsters that's at level 3, so definitely keep an eye out for an update once that stuff comes out. Then at level 7, we have Psyframe Lord 𝗍𝗓, not nearly as popular as his brother, but he does have a dodging effect, and that's anytime your opponent has a special summoned attack position monster, i.e. any Link monster in the game, you could go ahead and quick effect banish both of them together, and then they come back. Now you disrupt your opponent's Link chain combo. They have to put it back in their main monster zone, so the arrow placement's probably subpar if they were using like the diagonals, so it's very, very good against rogue strategies, and it's a Psychic monster, so if it dies, even though it doesn't have Omega's like bring it back to the extra deck ability, you can literally just go ahead and just go summon it back to the field. And it technically does have a recycle effect, but that's only if you play other Psyframes. I don't think it's worth playing the other Psyframes until that Link monster comes out. Once 𝗍𝗓 comes out, then this, or not 𝗍𝗓, I forget what the name of that other one is, Delta, I think, something like that. Once that Psyframe Link monster comes out, then this card will be even better because you could play Psyframes in this strategy and it'll be, pretty interesting to try out. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, I don't know. But as of now, it's still a very good generic level 7 monster that happens to be Psychic for this strategy. And then for level 8s, we have Psyframe Lord Omega and Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. Don't need to introduce Omega all that much here. I think it's just generically useful in taking out a card from your opponent's hand, not dying because it dodges. 2800 attack body, recycles itself from the graveyard for free, potentially disrupting your opponent's grave play or recycling one of your power cards, and of course has the ability to shift cards that are banished back into the graveyard. That effect actually isn't that useful in this strategy. We're not playing something like Mizuki that we want to go and recycle every turn, so you're really not using it for that. It's just a generically powerful 28 Psychic monster, and again, if it dies, since it's Psychic, you can bring it back to the field instead of having to resummon it from the extra, so it's really good there. And then Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, I want to talk very slightly about a fun little combo. So this card is, of course, really, really good in that it's able to go ahead and destroy a monster who activates its effect and then absorb its attack points. It also cannot be killed by monsters with levels, essentially, because it gets powered up anytime it fights anything that's level 5 or higher. So basically, good against most cards, right? And the way you bring this out very easily is you start off with either Emergency Teleport or Serene Psychic Witch. Hopefully it's a teleport. You know, again, I really hope this card comes back to multiple because we're trying to go for Esper Girl off of any of these cards, but it's still doable off of Witch, albeit very slowly. Esper Girl comes out. She was banished and summoned off of Witch, but we won't consider that. Let's say you just teleport this card out. So you have Esper Girl. You go ahead and you tribute her in order to summon out your Overdrive Teleporter, right? And then you go ahead and use its effect, pay 2,000 life points, summon out 2 copies of Hush Psychic Cleric, and then you're able to go ahead, actually not 2 clerics, I misspoke here. You're going for a level 3 tuner monster, which may end up being Ghost Ogre for right now, but then there are, again, some like Dual Links associated Savage Strike Psychic monsters. Not the best, but they kind of combo with the strategy, so I'll take them. Basically, you go ahead, you use this effective cleric, tether your Esper Girl away by discarding a card. You go ahead and synchro the 2 of these into a level 6 monster. Maybe you decide, hey, I want to go for my Psychic Nightmare, and then that will, let me look at my opponent's card for free from their hand. And then Esper Girl also comes out. Now that lets you go and recover a card because it banishes one face down. Esper Girl can tune with the Nightmare now, replacing the card you discarded for the Cleric, and now that turns into a Crystal Wing right there off of just having this card along with Esper Girl was on your field. That's the only requirement you need. Doesn't matter if you go through Teleport or Witch, you just need to have this card when you have Esper Girl in play. And realistically, if Esper Girl's in the graveyard already, you can tribute any monster. So it could be a hand trap, like the construction train that you tribute for this guy, which is another reason I like playing that card here. Basically, very easy Crystal Wing play. You can easily adapt that maybe into an Omega instead. So now I see what one card my opponent has. I can go ahead and banish another one, or maybe that one, it's random, so I don't know, using Omega, and then just go for a hand disruption strategy. So very interesting, very simple combo set up just by Overdrive Teleporter and Esper Girl. So that's one of like the little bread and butter combos of this strategy. Again, it gets a lot better when teleports at multiple, but it's also viable. I show it in certain strategies, but just to discuss with words, Brilliant Fusion can yard level 2 Psi-Frame Light Tuner monsters as well. Although it's not Esper Girl for the free card, you're basically able to go ahead and have your level 2 light monster in the grave. You go sack your Seraphonite for your teleporter, and then go for basically the exact same combo, and this thing will then banish your level 2 Psi-Frame Lord Delta or whatever the heck it is, and then you can go ahead, and I guess Gamma works too, right? So you could go Gamma, tune the 2 of these into your level 6, and then go ahead, bring out your level 2, tune it with your 6, go for your Crystal Wing. So that's where the Brilliant Fusion version of this combo takes place as well. But it all starts off with having Overdrive Teleporter accessible through some, teleport-esque shenanigan. And there you have it, an in-depth introduction to the Banish Psychic theme that I so love. Let me know down below what you think of the strategy below, and don't forget to check out the iCard in the top right hand corner to check out some other past builds of this strategy, and check out the variety that this strategy is able to pull off. It's a beloved strategy of mine for a very, very big reason, and it's because of how flexible this strategy is. I've had fun with this deck for years, and looking at things, it may not be time to retire them. I think I'm going to have more years of fun to come. So thanks guys, this is JDGaming. Hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time. That's the end of this video, but there's plenty more where it came from. I invite you to explore the playlists on screen to see what else I have to offer, and if you really liked what you saw today, consider subscribing to JDGaming for more Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Thanks guys, this is JDGaming. Hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.